Hi everyone, Rachel Jensen here, the Gringa, and with me I also have Job, the local. We have a very special guest today, and this is one that I say is very special because they have done a tremendous amount of work in the community, and they are really just putting a ton of effort into representing the inhabitants of the island that really don't have a voice, or maybe a voice that we don't necessarily understand when they speak. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. But we have Ben Sept, board member of ACES Wildlife Rescue, here with us, and he's going to be telling us a little bit more about the organization, how he got involved, his story here on the island. And I think we'll just jump right in, Ben, and tell us a little bit more about you. Who is Ben? How did he end up here on the island?
All right. So I'm married. I've got 3 kids. And back in 2015, we decided to take a 6-month hiatus out of Canada and came down back in 2015. And about 2 months in, we decided that there was just no way we could go back. So we canceled our return flights and we've been here ever since.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And you mentioned you have 3 kids.
We do.
So they're being raised here on the island as well.
They were 2, 4, and 6 when we got here, and they are currently 11, 13, and 15.
Oh my gosh, shows you how much time is flying, huh? I love it, I love it. So tell us a little bit too about ACES. So ACES Wildlife Rescue, what is it about? How did it get started here? And then how did you get involved?
So ACES is actually an old organization. I think it originally started, and I don't know the exact dates, but we're talking back 2010, 2008, somewhere back, way back when. Vincent Shree actually started it. They ended up on the island probably in, let's say, 2010, 2011, and I don't know the dates offhand, sorry. But they found a kid, his name was Chris, who was just passionate, wanted to get involved. And as they ended up moving off island, he took over ACES. At that time, it was just an education and sanctuary. And Chris was out there by himself, handling, anywhere from 8 to 10 foot crocodiles, moving them out when needed, and just kind of doing his own thing.
Well, and that's right, because ACES initially stood for American Crocodile Education Sanctuary.
Exactly.
Right, and then over time, as there's been more development happening, as more people have been living on the island, building, developing, there's been more animals, right? And it's not just crocodiles, it's also the rehabilitation aspect of animals that are injured or anything along those lines. So now it's ACES Wildlife Rescue, and not necessarily just the Crocs.
Not just Crocs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I think it was 2017, 2018, Christina ended up moving to the island, and she was just assisting Chris with the crocodiles. And they started to realize that more and more they were getting calls for different wildlife, and we would end up just sending the wildlife onto the mainland. We would send them to other rescues or sanctuaries and get them treated. And it was really Christina who decided that this was something that she just had a heart for, was not just removing problem crocodiles, but actually rescuing and rehabbing animals. So right now we're doing, I think, 300 plus intakes a year. We should probably just get a real number from Christina.
We can add that in the description below.
Insert here the correct number.
But a lot.
We do a lot.
Almost one a day. I mean, when you think about it, really almost one a day.
Sometimes more than one a
Wow.
day. We are one of the busiest rescues and wildlife resources in the entire country now. I think we're just behind 1 or 2 others overall for the entire country.
Oh, it's impressive, right? And when we think about just the expansion on the island here, right? And as you go up as you continue to go up north and north, that's where a lot of the wildlife is living. So I'm sure we're going to be getting busier and busier at ACES, which is exciting. And I know that there's a lot obviously that goes into it as well. But tell us a little bit about the animals that you have at ACES. How is it determined if they're going to be a resident there or rehabbed and brought onto the environment? What happens behind the scenes at ACES?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. We have a real, I think we might be, in a way, we don't want to keep any animals, which sounds a little counterproductive. We do have tours that we run, so we generally run 1 or 2 tours a day. Those have been on a bit of a hiatus over the summer, but we're going to be starting those up again. And we do have 5 different crocodiles that are on our site in the sanctuary. We've got a few iguanas, budgies, rabbits, chickens, and several other animals, even osprey like the seahawk. We've got one of those. And it's just a great time for people if they want to make an appointment, they can come, they can see it. We provide a tour and explain why the animal's there. Like I said, we don't keep animals unless we have to keep them. So we have Phineas, who was a crocodile that he was captured, I think, in 2017. And he actually had been initially found out in the lagoon with wire wrapped around his mouth and with a big scar behind, or a big open wound behind his head. And so they were able to catch him. It was actually, we had booked a tour that night, my family, and it got canceled by Christina because they had to go and get this croc. They had finally found it. So they went and got and rescued this croc. And then I think it was Ingrid, or no, it might have been someone else, actually helped with doing some sutures and getting Phineas back to where he was actually able to survive. So it took a lot of work, but we found he wasn't releasable because he's so used to being fed that he was a problem crocodile. So he's now over 10 feet, nearly 11 feet long. He's got his own pond at Aces, beautiful animal. Then we've got Jules, and she may have been a pet when she was just a young croc. She doesn't know anything about how to hunt. So we have to feed her. If we stopped feeding her and tried to put her in the wild, she would probably just fade away.
Wow.
It's interesting. We have fish in her pond, and she won't eat the fish. But if you fish one of the fish out of the pond and it's flapping on the bank, she will gladly jump out and eat the fish. She just has zero prey drive whatsoever, but when the opportunity is there for food, she'll take it.
Do you know about how old she is at this time?
I think she is probably in the 8 or 9 year old range now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And tell us about the other ones as well.
We've got
I love the names that they have. Real pet names. I love it.
We've got Cecilio. We thought it was a girl and turned out to be a boy, blind, and so non-releasable. And Toothless, who she actually, we'd had her previously and caught her and released her up north, and then she ended up falling into like a drainage area and couldn't get out, and so she ended up starving. She was just absolutely nothing when we received her. We called her Toothless because her body was so broken down that her teeth they were falling out. And then we have Buddha. And Buddha we've had for quite a while. If you ever did a tour with Aces back in like 2017, that time frame, if we couldn't find a crocodile on the tour, then we had Buddha on the boat and could do a bit of a show and tell with Buddha to let kids see, what a crocodile looked like and touch and feel. And Buddha, he had a bit of a let's call it an eating disorder for all intents and purposes, but he was quite an old croc and just didn't grow.
Wow.
And so he was kind of like this dwarf crocodile. He's now growing fairly well. It seems like he's found his metabolism and it seems to be growing well, but he's been with us for so long that he's the 5th one that we have.
Oh, it's amazing. And I think, Job, you grew up here, right? So having crocodiles around and the environment is nothing new for you, right? I know a lot of times when expats or tourists come like, crocodiles, they're so scary. But tell us what it was like with crocodiles cohabiting when you were younger, because it's changed a lot, right? The whole mentality, the whole education has changed a lot.
Well, yes and no. I think it's still very much lacking with a lot of people, but in the overall population, I do think it has improved. I remember coming down here, and you remember right after Wasa, where they would get fed. They would throw the chicken out, and they would drive them out, and you'd have a show there, and the guys would jump on top of the crocodile and feed them, and obviously, now that we look at it, that was probably a bad idea because you made them dependable on human, feeding. But that was kind of my first personal interaction with crocodiles. And overall, I'd never seen a crocodile. I mean, I'm from Guatemala City. I had never seen any wild animal outside of the regular zoo. But that was interesting. But it definitely is something that you grow along with, that we actually make a lot of jokes about, when, and this might sound mean, but when a dog goes missing, we said, Croc got him, kind of thing. And because back then, there was the lagoon and the island was kind of, there wasn't like a border, you said, oh, these here, you can see the seawalls, you can see where where the crocodile's not going to come in. Back then, it was more of like a coexist. And you had San Pedro as like San Pedrito, San Mateo, where they were not land, they were the swamp, they were the lagoon. Back then when you had to bridge walk San Mateo, I would go back there and to church, and would always have to keep your eyes open, because when you're walking on the bridge, you don't know where the heck the crocodile would be, obviously, and stuff like that. So it was very much of we knew they were there, and you just had to cohabit with them. The knowledge of people respecting them for what they are, instead of hunting them and stuff like that. It has changed. I do think there's still a lot to go about it. It's actually funny because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Facebook news right now. We had a video about in social media about this girl saying that in Belize we have very unique foods, and one of the things she mentioned was oxtail, and then she mentioned that we do crocodile barbecue, and that we do turtle soup, and we were like, no, we don't. No, we don't. But we do still have people who intentionally go and hunt the crocodile because of their skin or because of the teeth and so forth. So I believe it's getting better, yes.
And it takes generations too, right? It takes the education. And I think, that's something that is just amazing about the ACEs group, is that there's that education component to it. And it is changing, you're right. And I think it's good for people to see that. And again, as the development comes, you need to be aware of what's happening in crocodiles, and you are encroaching on their habitats and what that means as an island. And so having an organization like ACES, I think, is really incredibly important for the island, because otherwise, you'd have nobody to call at, 2:00 in the morning or whatever time, you're encountering it. And, there's families around, there's, like you're saying, dogs around, there are kids around. You need to have that emergency hotline, we'll say, for.
I think everyone, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people especially who are around and all over the place, have had an encounter with ACEs, a positive one. I'll give you an example. One day I was going out to Lena Point, and I was crossing the road. Were you there with us? So we saw this snake, and this snake was very unresponsive to the golf cart being there, or like almost crossing her, and I saw her like wiggling into the yard, and I think I messaged WhatsApp, and they said, yeah, just we'll let it there and what's not. But then I guess they were able to send someone in, and they actually messaged me afterwards and told me that thanks to the call, because they approached the snake, and the snake wasn't really, I don't know was wrong with it, but it wasn't responding as a snake would to. So
That was my call.
that was your call?
It was.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
we lived literally 100 feet away from where the snake was, and when we picked it up, it was pregnant. And stargazing, which means as a snake, its head, it was going back like this, and it just seemed like it was off balance. So it just kept reaching back and wouldn't control its own movement. So when we saw that, we actually were able to take it to ACES. I remember the snake exactly. We took it to ACES and we kept it, and it actually, we were able to release all of the young. And I think that snake actually ended up over time, and it took a few months to control the neurological damage. It got hit by a golf cart in Mar Laguna there, where you found it.
It wasn't us.
Yeah.
We saw it, and we were like, oh, because we saw it, and it was like, it's not responding as a snake would. If a snake sees you on the road and it sees something, they'll try to move away. No, it wasn't doing that. But that's good.
Your initial instinct is to call ACEs.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. And that's good. And I hope this episode will help spread that word on, once you see a wildlife acting in an unnormal way than what a live wildlife, it's good to call them up, take pictures, send it to them so that they can, do their best. Absolutely.
Right, because let's say someone's driving up north and they see a crocodile across the road and someone calls ACEs, you're not necessarily going to respond to that, right?
So a lot of our calls, we end up doing education. We just went up north. There was a call. Someone's dog was lost just this last week. They were really concerned. And what we've had to really learn ourselves and try to help teach the island is crocodiles are extremely intelligent. They will actually remember us as captors. So if Chris had caught a croc in 2012, 2013, If I go and look at that croc, the croc will sit there and stare at me and do nothing. When Chris shows up, that croc turns and leaves. They're just that intelligent that they have that recognition. He's like, I don't know if it's my voice. I don't know if it's my smell because I'm smoking. I don't know what it is, but as soon as he would come, they would leave. If we've caught a crocodile in a culvert, and we have these culvert traps, we can put that culvert there with the tastiest piece of chicken in it, and it will sit there for days, and he will not touch it because he's been caught in that trap. And actually, we have one in DFC right now where, and if we need to cut this out, we can, but it's a really cool story to me. The crocodile had been caught in the culvert, we believe, refused to go in the culvert, but started using the chicken in the culvert to bait raccoons, and was capturing raccoons as they were going into the culvert.
No way.
And eating the raccoons. And so we get this frantic call from the people whose house it is because they could hear the crocodile catching the raccoons that were trying to get the chicken that was in the culvert. It's incredible how smart they are. So we have to do a lot of education because I can't just go, okay, well, there's a crocodile. I'll tell you what, I'll catch him right now and I'll take him up north, because they also have a homing beacon and they will be back to the same location or roughly in that same location within a couple of weeks. It doesn't matter how far north we take them up on the island.
Oh, interesting.
They're really, really good at finding their way home. And so now we've got a croc who's been caught one way in that location, and I have to figure out a different way to catch him.
Wow. You
Because
write
they're not
down on
gonna
the
go with
notes,
it.
like, all right,
Yeah.
we tried this with this crocodile.
It
and-
becomes very apparent when you try something and they look at it and they're like, yeah, right, I am not falling for that again. We do tag all of the crocodiles, so they have a little chip in them, and we can see exactly how many times we've captured it, where we've captured it, what size they were, any injuries they had in the last captures. So we've got that backlog for years and can do that type of research ourselves. But when we have those types of calls, like this one with the dog, the first thing we do is we look at we look at it like, we can't fix nature for you. We have to be able to, live with the nature as it is. We're now in their territory, so what can we do to protect our animals and protect ourselves from them? And in this case, it was, it'd be really beneficial for yourself to be able to set up a fence around your yard so the crocodile can't just come into your yard and grab a dog. Unfortunately. And thankfully, we have a lot of great stores on the island that do shipping containers. And so there's pallets available. And a lot of times that's our recommendation, is go to these stores as they're getting these shipments, grab the pallets, ask them for the pallets, and use those to help protect yourselves and your.
Oh, interesting. And so I know you said that they're intelligent, but what would you say is the typical demeanor of a crocodile? What is the
Great
personality of a crocodile?
So we have found that in Belize, despite some very common misconceptions, most of the crocodiles here are extremely fearful of humans. So they look at us as a predator, not as a prey in general. Once they become accustomed to humans and humans start feeding them, then that's where we start to see those crocodiles and the behavior changes. And I can tell, and my whole family, even my kids, can look at a crocodile and tell you fairly quickly whether it's been fed or not. You just start to see a very different change in behavior. And they all do the exact same thing with that change in behavior. They start lining up and they eye you up, and they're looking to see if you've got something that you're going to put it in the water. They'll generally sit out in the water, 20, 30 feet or whatever it is.
And just wait.
Just wait to see. And they're eyeing you up to see what you got. And then when they become more aggressive, they will start coming, closer to shore. And those are the ones that become those problem crocodiles like Phineas, where we have no choice. And we don't want to have to kill a crocodile. There just aren't that many left, to be honest.
That's one question that I was going to ask you too, and sorry for interrupting. Yeah. Could you give us a little estimate of what you think the population of crocs, or at least the numbers that you've seen here for yourself as the organization has come across?
Yeah. So we did a survey last year. We actually had someone who was getting their master's degree in crocodilia, and he came and spent the entire summer here. And we did a survey across the entire island, all the way up to the large lagoon up north past Robles Point, and all the way down to the bottom, and spent days and nights going through and looking for crocodiles, counting them, whenever possible, getting measurements on them. We believe there are roughly 65 to 66 adult crocodiles left on the entire island. That's it.
Yeah. Is there any way? I mean, obviously, apart from that's a whole different conversation, but destroying the wildlife habitats, mangrove areas and what's not. What are things that maybe ACEs might be doing, or how can we hope that, the population stops declining and actually you start seeing, hopefully in a couple of years, more crocodiles be part of the ecosystem?
It's a really good question, and we've looked at a few ideas. What we have noticed is, especially because the island is just getting so built up. So crocodiles you generally believe crocodiles are on the lagoon side. But in reality, especially because this island is so narrow, crocodiles will actually travel across the island and fish for barracuda and other things on the front side of the island. So, at dawn and dusk, they're actually going back and forth. Now, because we are getting so overpopulated, not overpopulated, but the island's getting so busy, and with the roads and the buildings, they're not able to go back and forth as much. We're also seeing that, of course, the most popular places to buy are right on the water. So whether it's on the front side or on the lagoon side, and those properties are being developed, and when they're being developed, the nesting areas are being taken away. So the adult crocodiles really don't have anywhere that they can lay eggs. They need to have nice sand that they can dig into, and more we're finding that those nesting areas are disappearing. So it is education. It's also trying to be proactive. Something that we've been looking at, and this was something Chris really wanted to do, and we still want to try this, is to find ways where we can create sunspots for crocodiles. Where out in the middle of the lagoon, maybe we've got some sort of a dock that they can actually climb onto in sun, where they're so far away and out of the way of us as humans that people don't feel so fearful of them and aren't trying to shoo them away or call us to have them removed. The nesting,
So that they can nest too as well, or not just so they can hang out?
that would be for sunning, and that would definitely help because crocodiles, they're being cold-blooded, they need to get out of the water.
Okay, so that's why they're out in sunning. So
Yeah.
they're not just getting a tan.
They're not getting a tan. They're trying to warm up. They're trying to warm up their bodies. And so what you'll find if you look at those crocodiles, they're usually out, and once they've been in the sun for a little bit, their mouth starts opening up, and that's called gaping. And it's not aggression, it's just that's what they're doing. It's called gaping. And the more we block their access to the land, the more they move away from that area. They just can't continue to live in those areas. They can't produce, they can't get out of the water to get warm. We've even seen some interesting behaviors where now we're calling it kind of mooning, where they're getting out of the water in the middle of the night and just trying to warm up as well. So some changes of behavior, and at least that we believe is a change in behavior.
Because usually it's dawn and dusk that they're coming out.
Yeah, they want to warm up in the sun.
Sure, right, of course, yep.
But if it's too busy and they can't, then they're going to try and get out of the water and warm up one way or another. But yeah, I think if we, as a community can look at ways of, and understand what they're trying to do,
right?
We've had, as ACEs has become more known on the island, we've gotten some amazing people on the island who have just become like people who call us for any animals in any trouble at any time. We had a gentleman who killed a boa, and he said, like, I will kill any snake I ever see. And we said, like, okay. And then they asked us, like, what can we do because this property beside us is overrun and there's rats in it and they're getting into the house. And I said, well, you just killed your number one line of defense. Like the boa, that's what they do. They're eating your rats. They're eating the raccoons when they get bigger. They're not after you. They're not after your kids. They're not venomous. They're okay. A couple weeks later, we phoned and he had one again, but he didn't kill it. And this time I was able to actually, thankfully with the temperament of the snake, I pulled it out of the bag and I held it. And he saw that, I'm not afraid of this snake. The snake's not aggressive towards me. He's not aggressive towards even his kids as they came and saw it. The same person called us because they found crocodile eggs. And we were able to get 19 baby crocodiles in my house hatch out of their eggs this spring in June.
Wow.
And so we had these eggs there, and then we were able to go and find a new mom out in the wild and provide those babies to the mom, and then they'd have that protection as well. So,
Oh, that's amazing.
so we went from one man who was going to kill every snake to a man who's now saving snakes, or at least not killing them, and a man who's saved 19 crocodiles, and hopefully, 2 or 3 of those crocodiles will grow to be adults and help the population.
Well, and you said something that I think is so incredibly spot on, and I remember learning about this in biology, and I think most people get it, is that there's a purpose for every animal here, right? And it's the circle of life, and it's how things work. And without that one part, then the entire cycle gets disrupted, right? So there are people out there like, oh, why don't you just kill the crocs? Why don't you just kill the
Always.
crocodiles, right? Because that seems like the easiest solution, but in the long run, that would just cause an entire disruption to the ecosystem here. And while we have such a fragile barrier reef, right, on the east side of the island, we don't know maybe you do know what the repercussions would be of getting rid of all the crocodiles, but it would absolutely change the marine life here.
It's interesting. So crocodiles are a keystone species, meaning that a keystone species. They're at the top of the food chain for themselves, but they're also an indicator species. So there are other animals that are also at the top of the food chain, but a crocodile and the crocodilian species being keystone means that they're an indicator of the health of the overall environment. So when the environment's getting worse and the crocodiles are declining, it's a very good indication that there's something wrong with the ecosystem. And I think with the construction that we've had, and even seeing in 10 years the population drop, by a third from the previous survey. It's a real concern for us.
Sorry to interrupt, but what was you said 10 years ago you guys did a survey. What was that numbers like?
About 200 adults is what we saw then.
So you've seen, that's a big difference. And how have you guys, and this may be, something that may call attention to the right people to take action to possibly, because we're seeing it all the time. I mean, example myself, I see it as a real estate agent, and it's just sad how just all the lagoon has basically been subdivided into property. And then I personally believe, I'm a avid believer in development. Development brings economy and what's not, but I believe that unfortunately here in San Pedro, and I did say this out loud, there has been no checks and balances when it comes to that. It just has been a free-for-all for everybody. Well, not for everybody, but we now know how that works. But it has been a free-for-all, and it has not been checked. Is there conversations that you guys would be wanting to have or are having with the proper authorities or the property organizations to maybe even possibly designate? I would say, like you were mentioning about there's no nesting sites are seeing decline. So maybe, a big bunch of lagoon side where, it gets designated as a no-build zone. It gets designated as for crocodiles and wildlife only zone. Is there conversations going on? And if there isn't, who would be the entities in the government that would, maybe their ears would have to get ringed a little bit so that they can actually come and say, you know what, it is important that we start having these conversations now, because clearly the decline has been there.
I don't think it's too late, which is we're hopeful. But education can only do so much. We can only change the mindset of the people on the island, but like you said, especially with large resorts growing and building, and then just larger homes, and the priority is how can we make money and how can we draw more tourists. So a really nice chunk of land in the lagoon is going to be very difficult for us to convince anyone to leave alone, because it's just the golden goose. But we would love to be able to have conversations and love to see in San Pedro, not even just for wildlife, but for our family. Where are the green spaces? We would love to see some green spaces. We would love to have parks, more parks, beach space where people can come and walk along the lagoon or walk along the front side and just make it more family friendly with more family friendly activities as well. From a dad and my perspective, But on the flip side of that as well is for the crocodiles, I think it would be a phenomenal idea if we could say, okay, instead of selling that small key that's 2 miles in diameter, or a small little island off of San Pedro or Ambergris, that should be left alone. Like, let's leave that for the animals and let nature continue to prosper. You mentioned the reef. One of the keys to the reef is actually the mangroves, and we're just watching the mangroves get cut, not just on the front side, but on the back side of the island all the time. If we could see maybe true, real penalties, or requirements. If you're going to cut the lagoon down, then you have to plant different trees, or you have to, there's a fund that maybe that money goes to do mangrove restoration in other areas that we can then preserve for the environment so that we can continue prospering. Being a keystone species, if we lose the crocodile, we're going to lose a lot of other things. And I think, losing the mangrove means also losing the reef.
So what I'm hearing, and I mean, I put it this way, there isn't much conversation coming from the governmental side, because that's just who they need to, that's just who the people who need to take out. There isn't the conversations being done, or at least being put forward by them to be able to actually do something.
Not with our organization. I think with others, and there is a call within Belize. We were on a great call a couple months ago, and there's definitely organizations and groups within Belize that want to see sustainability. And ACES, we weren't able to put a proposal in for that this round, but we're really hoping that we can the next round, where we could get a grant that would help within San Pedro and allow us to really maximize some ideas around sustainability. And that's going to be one of the goals that we have if they open up another funding opportunity.
Because I see it as a possibility that we all know that the majority, and I think this is from our viewers will relate, that the majority of us, at least for Belizeans, realize of the importance that our ecosystem has in our lives. We live off of it. It's the people who are in the ground, working the tours, working the in and outs, working the restaurants, that know exactly what having our environment at the best possible chance means to us. So I do believe there could be a possible, there would be something that I think a lot of people, especially the working class, would get behind, because of the just basic necessity that we do see it, and that if we don't put pressure into the institutions that need to be put pressured on, or at least the voices heard, and this is one thing that we just mentioned too as well in our previous episode with the BTIA, is that if we all complain on Facebook, then nothing happens. But if we come together and we come as a union front, then your voices are heard a lot more louder than just ranting on Facebook about how you see the mangroves getting cut down and felled, which is the reality.
It really is. And I know, especially for Chris and Christina, they were really passionate about like doing garbage cleanups and different things like that for a long time. The problem is when it's on one organization to try and make and create those initiatives, you burn out really quickly. And that's been a major factor for us is, I'm a volunteer. This isn't something I get paid to do. I can only take so many 3 o'clock in the morning croc calls before my wife has to say, no, you're not taking that one. And I still have to show up for work at 7 in the morning for my job. But if we could get more of a focus at a governmental level, we work with forestry. If we could work with fisheries and really help solution some of these things and look at what Mexico has done and what they've done in the States, things that may have been successful other places, then we're not reinventing the wheel trying to figure out what can we do here. We're going to have to maybe change it a little bit. This is Belize, it's not Florida, but maybe the premise is there, and maybe we can take advantage of learnings that have been successful elsewhere.
And you just mentioned something when it comes to volunteering. What, how does people go by reaching out to you and funding, and maybe do you guys have maybe like for example, I'd probably be more of a, help hands-on. Someone else might say, you know what, I won't show up, but here's some funds. How can they go by not just reaching out to volunteer, but also maybe funding? Do you guys have how you go by that, doing that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think Sarah McLaughlin's "In the Arms of an Angel" should probably play right about now, and for a cup of a coffee a day. No, but seriously, but we definitely appreciate both the volunteers as well as financial giving. A lot of times when we do a rescue, whether it's raccoons for some reason that are in an attic, or a boa constrictor that's on someone's deck and their kids are staring at it and they don't know what to do, we're taking time out of our own lives to go and help. And they've been very gracious in providing funds and donating. And you can do that through our website. We have a local bank account as well. So both of those are great avenues. We actually have through Global Giving right now, which is a platform, a website platform, the ability to do recurring donations as well. So if you're able to do $10 or $25 a month, all of that literally goes to the animals. We take very, very little for our employees whatsoever. They're definitely underpaid. They're doing it because they love it. They do it because they have a heart and a passion for it. But I'm a volunteer. And I can say, without getting too personal, that during COVID, it was pretty scarce, but that pretty much all the money went to, getting x-rays for animals and everything else, to the point of, it being really tough on the organization, just because, the focus was on the animals.
And right now, I mean, obviously, if I'd go volunteer, you wouldn't put me to catch a crocodile. What would be activities that you guys would need help in right now?
Yeah, so we actually have a few different ways you can volunteer. One is we actually have a transport group on the island. So if we get a call and there's a bird that's down and it's down at the south end of the island, ACES is up by Grand Caribe. So for us to get in the vehicle and go out all the way down and have to stop doing food prep and feeding of the current animals and everything else, we have to put everything on hold to go get that bird. But what we're working to do is build up that transport group. So then we can put it out to the group and just say, there's a bird, it's in this location. And we've had a few really good success stories where people have been there and they just say, I've got it, I'll be there in 10 minutes. They pick it up and they drive it up to us. Short, easy, it's not a constant volunteering. So that's as easy as it gets. And then we have volunteers who come in. Our head volunteer will show up sometimes 5 days a week for 5-6 hours, and that's all volunteer time that she does. But she's coordinating the other volunteers. There's, cleaning of the enclosures. There's, unfortunately, dishes. But there's a lot of dishes for the animals. There's, food prep, and a lot of different things that people can come and do. Laundry, washing clothes, sheets and towels, and doing all the folding. All of those things need to get done. And when we have a good volunteer group that's taking care of it, and I think we have a pretty good group of volunteers right now, but we can always use more. That really just takes a lot of weight and pressure off of the employees so that they can get other work done that desperately needs to get done.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a team. How big is your team right now? Just so that people have perspective of, this is not, I'm pretty sure it's not a big group. So just so people understand, this is not a 100 people organization out here. These guys are kind of having to do everything, Give us a little insight on that.
Yeah, so with the passing of Chris back in May, Christina, his spouse, has taken over. So she's actually the executive director, and she's even just this last week, just pulling out all the stops, really working to get everything back and organized. And she's doing a phenomenal job. I'm really proud of her to be able to just work as hard as she is and try and, she's got a fairly large legacy to take up with Chris. Chris donated his entire life to this, and Christina has been donating her life for the last 7 years to this. We, believe it or not, are now paying her as an employee for the first time. So it's been almost volunteer work for her for 7 years. So she's now a paid volunteer, and we have another employee as well. Not paid volunteer, she's a paid employee. And we have another employee as well who does all of the groundskeeping for us. And he does a lot of work in the clinic with us as well. Phenomenal guy. He's been on the island for years and years. He'll take a pump that we would have just thrown in the trash, and he will have it up and running and pumping water for a crocodile pond in hours. Just really,
Very
really handy
handy.
guy. Yeah, and I can't thank him enough. On the volunteer side, I think we've got, probably including my wife and myself, and honestly our kids, we've got over a dozen volunteers. But my kids, when they go, even Christina said they've got a better sense of what's going on with an animal than sometimes, even she does, because they can look and just assess and be like, they've been doing it, since they were this high. And so there's about a dozen volunteers or so that come in on different days and just do different things. You're right, you're not jumping on crocodiles or doing anything like that. When I started, I saw a Facebook post from Chris, and he simply was saying that he needed some help. He was actually going into properties with a shredder and mulching palm trees and coconuts and different things. And he was trying to create healthy landfill so that when a local wanted to fill in their property, they weren't throwing trash in, but he would be able to provide a nice healthy property or landfill for the property. And so I just saw it on Facebook, and I'd reached out a few times and said, hey, I'd love to help, and this came up, and I didn't really even think he was going to respond. And I just said, hey, I'll do it. What do you need? And we ended up shredding palm leaves and fronds and everything for probably a week or 2 weeks. And then I was doing that one day and just helping clean up. And next thing you know, we were talking about other things. And I think it might have been a crocodile. Would you be comfortable helping if we secured it just to help? We need to feed a crocodile that, is really underweight, and we need to get her back up to weight. And so, just little by little, we roll you in based on what your comfort level is. We have a lot of strict rules. Obviously, we're dealing with very dangerous animals. So there's a lot of protocols that we have to put in place. They're also wild animals. You can't pet a raccoon. They just don't like it. They don't want to be pet. They're not like your dog that grew up being pet and wants that type of attention. And also, it's just being respectful that these are wild animals and that they're only with us for a short amount of time before we can turn around and get them released back into the wild.
Well, that's very very nice to know, and very beautiful to hear what these humans like Chris himself had such a big impact. And I remember when we saw what the news of his passing, how much I kind of sat back and told myself, you know what, at the end of my life, if so much people can come and you see the kind of impact he had, not just over in the environment, but as a whole, the number of people that thought of him and said, you know what, he was an amazing guy and so forth. And he was very selfless on the giving, right? And this is just from me, I probably never really met him like that. If I could look into it from outside and see, I was like, that's when you live in a way that you really truly live selflessly and you give back to the community. And bear in mind, not everybody might have the ability to, live for the cause completely, like how Chris has done and how Christina has done as well. She has funny story. You remember when we got ducks?
I remember when you got ducks.
So we got a really bad. We thought it was cute at first, but then they became a issue. And Christina actually tried homing the 2 male ducks that we had with her female ducks, but then she said, you know what, I can't keep them because they're just harassing the female duck all the time, and she gave us back. We finally got a proper home for the ducks, and that was a whole next story. But I got to know Christina a little bit more in close, but she as well. I can clearly see how selfless they are in the amount of time, and I even know she was unpaid, which is it's fascinating to see someone has such longing to want to give, to want to do all of that.
Yeah. We became really, really close as a family with Chris and Christina. They were like family to us. And it was their passion that drove us to volunteer, and it is their passion that really drives a lot of people to want to be there and see what they're doing. And you're right. It's not something that we're really happy or proud of, but we're really happy now that we're able to afford her at least a wage and that we can pay her. I think she deserves 10 times what she's getting, and with every effort, that's my goal, is to help raise that funding for her, because if you were to look at another sanctuary of this size anywhere in the world, they would be getting so much more than she's able to get right now from us.
Absolutely. So if you're watching this and you have the ability to be able to give whatever it is that you can give, we will be having all the information on how you can reach out to them, and all the links to what he just mentioned will all be down in the descriptions below, so you can go and do even that recurring giving that you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And a lot of the funding that we're talking about right now, we're aware that where ACES is, it's now what was North 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, is now becoming more and more populated and surrounded by resorts. And unfortunately, we're going to need to move. So we don't have a location yet, and we're still putting together a budget of what that's going to look like. We're going to have to rebuild a lot of structures, a clinic, and everything else. So, as that matures, we're really going to be needing additional funding to do that, so that we can continue to be sustainable and continue to be, the wildlife rescue, rehab, and sanctuary that we are today, tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's just not going to be able to be where it is, which is too bad. That's been Chris's family's legacy, is that land. That land has been in their family for generations. And his grandma was living there when he started doing the animals, and she let him put a few enclosures on. And, with her passing, which was back a few years ago, and then some additional funding from a few benefactors, we were able to put together some beautiful ponds and a beautiful sanctuary that it is today.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully you are able to get a brand new location, which you never know. Maybe the government will actually say, you know what, these guys deserve a couple acres somewhere close by. And hopefully the right people will come and, not just for the new land that you need to develop or you need to build, but for the actual renewing of all these resources that you've built up in this property and being able to somewhere else. Because I believe now, talking to you, and obviously from the small encounters that I've had with ACES and the knowledge of ACES and the work that they do in the community, it is something that I hope the right people will come up and say, you know what, this is not something that should be left in the back burner. This is not something that should be left out to chance, but it should actually be something that should be an organized effort. And I believe with the right organizing, the right people will hear it, and hopefully something will be positively done. But now moving on from ACES and what's, and I know.
But let me just
you
ask
had
one question
more
first.
question.
One question for you, for all those folks out there. What's the difference between a crocodile and an alligator?
Despite one seeing you in a while and one seeing you later, here in Belize, we only have crocodiles.
Okay.
There's two types. There's the saltwater, which we have in ambergris, and then we have the morlet, which is generally the ones that you see more on the freshwater in the rivers.
So crocodiles are in the freshwater because I don't know if you've ever heard this, but so many people are like, crocodiles in the sea. You remember, sea is a crocodile in the sea, alligators are in the freshwater, but that's not true.
That's correct. You are correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So the morlets are the ones we see in the rivers. It's a different species altogether. But we do actually have some hybrids. We know that they will crossbreed, and there are hybrids there. We believe Jules may actually be a hybrid, the one that we have at the sanctuary. So if you want to come and see the difference, schedule a tour. We're going to have tours probably twice a day, max 10 people, and it'll be by appointment. So if anyone wants to come and join, they just have to reach out to us via WhatsApp or Facebook, and we can schedule that. You can see a beautiful hybrid crocodile. Her coloring is just immaculate, and If you shake the palm tree in front of her enclosure, she will gladly come out and tell you that that's not okay.
With the mouth wide open.
Mouth is wide open, and she will expect, you to compensate her for that. And we do not actually have any alligators in Belize.
Okay.
We don't have any caimans or anything else. We do have just the crocodiles here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Good to know.
And now we're moving on a little bit more to island fun, and I know Rachel always has these questions about what are your favorite things, favorite places to go and have a good lunch here in the island.
Oh boy. Unfortunately, Sandbar seems to be the one place. Well,
no,
I shouldn't say
fortunately.
that. Fortunately, Sandbar is around. Unfortunately for me, but fortunately for Sandbar, no, Brittany's amazing, and we do eat there a lot, especially because we do so much with volunteering and rescue. So a lot of times it's too late for us to cook, and we just order something on the way home. And she has been amazing. We love her. When we're going out for a date night, Giotto, and then Frenchie's, I love both of those. Hidden Treasure, we were just there recently, and one of the daughters there, she's going into marketing and media, and she wants to do some volunteering at ACES as well. So, it's great. And we've been here for a while, so if we're gonna go on a date, we really have to go and find somewhere where no one knows us, which is getting harder and harder. But there are a few on the island that we've been able to find, and I think Acacia is one that we want to go and take a look at here soon.
Yes, please do come on out.
We're going to head up there, and no one should know us there. With the family, we actually just finally bought a kayak, and we're going to be spending more time out in the water, diving with. Chuck and Robbie are both good friends of ours, and so we do a lot with them, and they've been a huge supporter of ACES. And then we actually took one of their boats up to Tranquility recently and just spent the entire day up at Tranquility Bay, which not a lot of people do. I'm not even sure if a lot of locals go up there, but it's just so far away. You get this gorgeous beach. My daughter and I, my 11-year-old and I, were snorkeling and got surrounded by the largest school of sardines I've ever seen right in front of Tranquility. And we went down and just looked around in all directions, and we were surrounded by this wall of sardines. And it was 5 minutes of being in the middle of this school. It was really, really cool. She said that's the one thing she absolutely loved that day, and that was just last week.
Amazing.
Absolutely. And that's just the one. And you guys been here it was 2015, you said, right?
Yeah, 9 years now.
9 years now. So it just goes to show that if you're here long enough, you're going to have those kind of experiences that you just feel like you don't, they're magical kind of. So that's a great thing. How about mainland?
Mainland. So my wife is a birder, as is Christina and a few of our other friends. And so we do end up on the mainland. Ian Anderson's is phenomenal for locals. He's a phenomenal guy, and they offer local discounts year round, which blows me away. Ian's a great guy if you haven't gotten to meet him as well. A huge supporter of ACES. So whenever we do fundraisers, he also he gets upset if we haven't called him to arrange something. I've had that call. But yeah, we love going there. We love going into Cayo, up into the Mountain Pine area, and we find different little resorts. The kids love horseback riding up in Cayo in that area, and finding trails, walking trails. I have not taken them to ATM yet, but that's on my list to take my son. He's 15, and I think he's the perfect age to, get in there and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our next thing that we're also going to put is give us a list of the people the businesses that support you.
Sure.
And we'll put a list down below. So it's always good that if a business is, especially businesses like you said, Ian Anderson, that have constantly, and they're not just, here you go, a one-time donation, but they're proactive in wanting to help, that people know those businesses, and that they, obviously go and support those businesses because those businesses support you as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, horseback riding is definitely something I want to do again in the mainland, and that's definitely something beautiful to do. So Rachel, you have last question.
One last question. I have an idea. I know what your answer is going to be because you spoke about this,
Okay.
more or less. if you could be mayor of the island, right? Mayor Wally's retiring. He's done. He's handed you the baton. He said, it's on you. It is on you, Ben. You're going to do a great job. What would be one of the biggest priorities for you that you would like to either instill or enact, or what would you like to see here on the island?
I have a whole list. I wish you'd told me this. I would have read the list
like you do the
before.
Santa Claus scroll and like it just goes down all the kids' names on it.
No, I think you know, Wally's done a great job, and I think Danny, actually, I really appreciated Danny when he was in office as well. Both of them phenomenal guys, and have done a good job. And I want to say that, and they have both been, you know, very helpful to ACES, supportive of ACES. The mayor's office reached out when Chris passed away, and you know, provided their condolences, and you know, wanted to meet and everything else, and we really appreciated the support that, you know, we felt from them as well. I think there are a few things that, you know, we'd love to see, and we did talk a little bit about it, you know, around the subdivisions and being able to just provide some green spaces, you know, and things like that would be a huge thing. We had another accident with a truck today.
Yeah, we saw that.
Another thought that I've had was, you know, why don't, and Chris was actually really pushing on this as well, why don't we, you know, really push for European-sized vehicles and Asian-sized, you know, Asian country-sized vehicles, where these trucks are, you know, big trucks, but they're narrow and fit the streets. And I think there, you know, there would be very tough decisions that would need to be made, but I think it would really benefit the island if we, you know, forced, if you're going to cut down mangrove, that you replace the mangrove somewhere else, you know, so that if you're taking away from nature, you're helping nature in another way. If you get caught throwing garbage in the lagoon as filled, that you're fined for that, and it has to be removed, not just ignored. And that's not just from an ecosystem side, that's also from a tourism side. You know, you're selling real estate too, and you're driving someone across to show them a property, and
You're like, just look here, look here.
Yeah, don't look to your left. You don't want to
yep.
see that this is what happens on our island. It's kind of Beauty and the Beast in a way. You know, you have this gorgeous island, you have beautiful nature, all these animals, the sunsets sometimes are just to die for, the water, the clouds reflecting that color off the water when you're on the water taxi, and you're just like, I can't believe I call this home. And then you look down and you're like, I can't believe there's this much trash, you know, and through education, and I think through, you know, just proper assistance, I think we could really see some huge changes on this island.
You definitely, I think what you're wanting to put together is like a really good environmental bill/action plan for, you know, a comprehensive approach to the island, which is great. That's awesome. Well, guys, this was Job the Local,
Rachel the Gringa,
with
Ben the Aces.
Ben from ACES. And again, all the information to ACES, how you can donate, how you can help, will all be down in the descriptions below. The businesses that have been supportive to them, that list will be down below. Feel free to reach out to those businesses and patronize those businesses for the help that they've given ACES. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification button so that you are aware of when we drop new episodes. And we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.